Hi, everybody. Welcome along to episode 111 of Percussion Discussion. Before we get into it, as always, I'm going to ask you to check out all of our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, our world famous YouTube channel, where you can watch and listen to all of our interviews, past and present. Please subscribe, it only takes a second. If you would rather listen on the go, then the great news is all of our conversations are available in podcast form too. You can find these and download them from your favorite podcast provider. Please rate and review us if you can find the time. This way it helps other drummers find them and hopefully enjoy them as much as you do. On to today's guest. I'm thrilled to welcome this gentleman back. He's back for his third visit with us, believe it or not. He's one of the nicest guys in the business. It's as simple as that. For a very young man, he's done an incredible amount of ridiculously high profile work. He's did the recent Genesis tour. I'm giving it away now. You're getting the clues. He's played for his dad, Phil Collins, at the tender age of 15. And he's just about to go out on tour with Mike and the Mechanics. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome back the absolutely wonderful Mr. Nic Collins.
Nic, thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see you again.
No, thanks for having me on. As always, it's always a pleasure.
Well, you're so kind with it. It's the third time you've had to put up with looking at my face, so I do apologise. It's enough for anybody, that, isn't it?
No, it's a pleasure. Hey, yeah, I'm down to come on whenever. You know what I mean? Just talk all things drums. It's always a good time. So
well, it's really appreciated, and obviously you've been mad busy lately. I'm sure we all keep up with what you're doing on social media, and I guess a good place to start would be with your own band, Better Strangers. You've got a new single out, which I had a listen to, and the single is called Raincheck, and it's a heavy tune, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely heavy, and I guess it. But not like intentionally from our end, but I guess taps into more grungy, kind of more of a grungy type of vibe, I guess. But no, I mean, we released that back in December, and that's kind of a bit of an older song that we've been playing on the road for a while. But we kind of just started mixing our own stuff, just based on the fact that, you know, when you're sending it out to somebody to get mixed, and, you know, depending on what the budget is, like, there's definitely a slower turnaround, just in, you know, more that goes into it. So whereas this, we decided to kind of start doing it ourselves, and that was the first song that we kind of got to a point where we were like, oh, it was, you know, it sounds pretty good. I mean, it's got that raw energy that kind of matches the vibe of the song. So yeah, we decided to kind of put it out, and, you know, it's got a kind of cool little 9/8 drum groove over it.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, it's this weird kind of it to us, it kind of felt like a good bridge between the stuff that we have out already to the new stuff that we've got coming up. I mean, I think it's the Raincheck definitely kind of goes more on the grunge wave a bit more than the new stuff, but it's definitely got that more, I guess, progressive approach to the songwriting. I'm using progressive very carefully, because I got kind of got taught a lesson by a bunch of Genesis fans, like, this is not prog, and I'm like, oh dude, I'm sorry, man, sorry, it's not 1970s prog, but, you know, but yeah, it's a fun song, and it's always gone down well on the road, so we just put it out. But we actually just wrapped up our new EP, just finished recording, mixing, and mastering it. So we're hoping that comes out, you know, sometime soon, but we're taking our time. We want to put it out the best way possible, and you know, put it out correctly. But, you know, it's, you know, just been keeping busy. It's just it's been tough just because we haven't been able to get on the road. And you know, we played a couple shows here and there, but, you know, it'd be good to just get back and kind of tour a bit, you know, to just change the scenery and try and test out all this material live, you know.
Of course. Well, I've got a couple of things written by Raincheck, and I've got 6/9. I couldn't work out. It's quite tricky to tell, obviously, without knowing the parts, if it's in 6. I was like, is it 6? Is it 9? I just can't tell. So there we go. You cleared it up.
Yeah, the main verse is 9. I guess it's not 9. It doesn't have to be 9/8. I mean, it doesn't really matter how you count it. It's 9 is the number, and then the choruses though are just 4/4.
Yeah.
And same thing with the outro. But yeah, no, it's kind of weird, because the guitar, I didn't come up. Usually when it's odd time signatures, you'd think it's the drummer or the bass player coming up with it. But no, Raincheck was our guitarist, Joey. He came up with that riff and just out of nowhere. I don't think he even knew it was odd. It just, that's what felt right. So, it was kind of the first kind of time we started tapping into different time signatures and stuff like that. Well, not the first time we've done it, but, kind of the first time that we thought we did it well.
Yeah. Well, I think, but that's a nice way to approach music. If you don't know what time signature you're in and it still feels and sounds good, then that's a genuine way of writing. You're not writing something just for the sake of it in that time signature. Does that make sense? It's a 100%. natural thing.
And that's overall with just music theory in general. Like, obviously, I have very surface level knowledge of music theory because I took a class in, at school. But as a band, we're very, that doesn't really come into the equation, any kind of theory kind of thinking. It's really natural. And I think ultimately that to me, my favorite bands and even the bands that veer into kind of odd time and stuff like that, my favorite bands always take a more natural approach and not a studious approach, because then you start overthinking it. You're thinking about what's correct and what's not correct. Whereas really it's like if a chord sounds good or if a part sounds good, then let's keep it as it is,
Yeah.
And that's always kind of been our approach, more of a, songwriters rather than musicians, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally does. And I've also got underneath in brackets written Soundgarden / Rage Against the Machine. Maybe a little bit of Soundgarden in there. Influence, is that a conscious thing or not? Maybe, I don't know.
No, as far as Soundgarden, it's not really conscious, but I totally get where it comes from. We've gotten that quite a bit as well. That and Soundgarden, love their stuff, and Chris Cornell is always going to be one of the best kind of rock singers ever.
Yeah.
But the whole band are great, but they, never been one of the kind of main sources of inspiration for our stuff. Yeah. But I definitely get the Rage thing, just based on the fact that the vocals are really kind of more hip hop rap oriented, whether and it does have that kind of aggressive. I don't know. It's a bit of kind of a dark, angry tone of kind of everything throughout. So I definitely get that. But yeah, to us, it was, I guess, it was really kind of a straightforward song to write. I mean, it's interesting because the inspiration on our end is different from each member in the band, and that's totally different to what gets kind of put out there, what people take it when they listen to it. I think Royal Blood probably had a bit of an influence just on the kind of on the riff, but at least for me, I was actually for the chorus, I was pretty influenced by. He's a drummer. He plays for this band called Straight from the Path, but his name is Craig Reynolds.
Okay.
And he's a good kind of been able to start becoming friends with him through Instagram. But I remember this was years and years ago. I saw a video of his, and that was kind of the inspiration I took to this song, which was totally random. You know what I mean? But all it takes is watching kind of a drum playthrough on YouTube, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna steal that, and I'm gonna take it and put it in my song.
But that's the way the world goes with music. You just borrow from somebody else, don't you? Pass it on. That's the way it is.
It's just a big garage sale, is what it is.
Yeah, essentially. And obviously, you mentioned that you'd like to gig more with Better Strangers. You're not going to be gigging much in April, May, or June, are you? Because you're heading over, and I'm thrilled to say you're heading over to the UK with Mike and the Mechanics, which a band I love, and a band that obviously with a certain Genesis member, you're kind of the natural guy for that gig, aren't you? Obviously with Mike Rutherford. So was it an obvious choice for Mike? I don't suppose you can answer that.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I'm obviously very honored and grateful that he wanted me to play drums on the gig and on the tour, and it's always a pleasure to share the stage with Mike. I mean, above being a great writer and musician, he's a really great guy, and that whole group of dudes are good fun to be around. I mean, they opened for the Not Dead Yet tour for a couple, a leg in Europe, and then I think they did a couple shows with us on the first leg we ever did. Yeah. And so I kind of got to know them a little bit, which has definitely helped, and because it's always a nerve-wracking situation when you're going into a whole different kind of setting, different band. And so me knowing them is kind of, at least to me, made me feel definitely more comfortable, prior to starting rehearsals. but yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of those things that it wasn't like, it was mentioned while we were on tour with Genesis. It was a couple months later. It was summertime, and I was in the UK with Better Strangers playing some shows. And yeah, the tour manager Pud, who's kind of tour managing us as well, which was funny considering he went from kind of doing the kind of arenas with Genesis to in the van with 4 kind of dudes, just like doing it from from the ground up again. But yeah, he asked, and then got on the phone with Mike, and yeah, I'm very, very happy to be doing it. But it was really nice, and I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess you would assume it's a natural kind of natural progression, doing the Genesis thing to doing the mechanics thing. But obviously, stepping in for Gary Wallace is always, big pair of shoes to fill, and he's been around the band for so many years that I'm just kind of grateful and lucky to kind of have that opportunity, really.
Absolutely, and they always, Gary can't do something. There's always a great drummer. My good friend Steve Barney's done quite a lot of shows with Mike and the Mechanics, and I know it's a gig. I think he enjoyed it, but I think who wouldn't enjoy a gig with Mike and the Mechanics? An amazing back catalogue of songs. I mean, what's not to like?
Really, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is it's a fun gig, and it's a fun show. Like, obviously I've been able to watch it in person a couple of times. Well, a bunch of times because they were opening. So I always really enjoyed watching their set. So it's just like it's a really fun gig, as well as there being so many kind of hits that a lot of the songs. Some people have told me it's like, you go to it and you're like, oh my God, I forgot that this song, but it was huge. You know what I mean? And so it's a kind of really cool catalog to be kind of tackling, and fun drum parts, too.
Yeah, sure. And I mean no disrespect when I say this, but some of the parts are a huge amount less challenging than the Genesis gig. There's nothing too much to worry about. Is it one of them gigs you can just enjoy? I know that it has its moments, but it's I'd imagine it'd be more of a relaxing gig just to get you stuck, teeth into and enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as far as that, we'll see when we get on the road. Just at least on a rehearsal standpoint, and for me prepping the material, it's definitely been a slightly different approach to the Genesis stuff, just because with the Genesis stuff, like you said, it was more about physically, can I, like, A, do I know the part, and then B, can I play it? And that was more of like, that was where I was kind of concentrating, is actually physically being able to do some of the parts, or knowing kind of these complex musical bits and whatever. But with the mechanics, it's more of, the parts maybe aren't as challenging, but I'm now really having to learn the song and the song structure, and that's more the kind of angle that I've taken more of a listening approach to making sure the song, not just know the parts. Where some of the Genesis stuff, it's like, if you do this, and it's more kind of it's just based on kind of what you're trying to play, whereas this, it's more the song and what's right for the piece and the part. But
big picture thing, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And I'm sure it will be fun. I mean, the good thing is that, well, not the good thing. It's I'll go either way. But it's great that Mike has always said the mechanics gig is a bit different. So if you know the parts, and if kind of some of the important iconic fills, you can kind of do your own thing around that. Whereas like with Genesis, it's of course I can do a little bit of that, but at the same time you're trying to kind of play these famous parts that people have grown up with, and people don't want to hear me do my own thing on Genesis. They want to hear Genesis, you know what I mean? So it is a bit of a different kind of approach, but I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, it's a lot of shows, and I'm sure, from the vibe I've gotten from what I've listened to, it's kind of every show is a bit different. There's, some different jams or different kind of parts. So, I'm really looking forward to it, but I we'll see on the road really how that kind of feels, whether it settles more into kind of like, fun, relaxing, or if it's more like, oh man, it's actually trickier than I thought. You know what I mean? Who knows?
Well, have you got a huge rehearsal schedule with them, or is it quite a small window to get road ready with them?
It's not massive. I think it's probably about a week and a half, I think, is how long we're rehearsing, which is, enough time. But it's one of those things like, I think Mike is also one of those guys who's like, I don't really want to rehearse. Let's get on the road. You know what I mean? Which is cool. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the whole band. And it's let's go out and play some music as opposed to, being, because for the Genesis thing, we almost had more legs of rehearsals than we did of the tour. I mean, it was like so much rehearsal, and obviously that's because of COVID.
Of course.
It was a different kind of thing of going through all the stages of the normal rehearsals to the production rehearsals and whatever else,
Yeah, and then of course you had to do it twice with obviously the first time it got scrapped with COVID. So yeah, but the great thing is there are so many dates involved, and it's obviously it's a smaller show, isn't it? It's smaller venues, which means you can do more gigs in a week. So I haven't written it down, but it's 60 odd shows, isn't it, in the UK alone? I believe.
Yeah, it's something around that. It's a lot. It's all I know is it's from pretty much April, May, and then we do like a week in June in Germany. Yeah, but it's essentially 8-9 weeks, all kind of UK and Germany, really.
That's fun. Yeah, I've got the date. That's the 12th of April to May 28th. There we go. I've been organised today. So obviously, if you're watching this thinking, I need to go and see this band, see this drummer, book your tickets. I know the tour's doing well. I've had a little look and a lot are sold out already. So that's good news.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's great news. I mean, it's always good to get back on the road in any way, to just be playing in front of audiences. And it's interesting because we're playing so many places in the UK, some places that, even as somebody who, obviously my dad is English, there's some places I've never heard of that we're playing. So I'm excited to see, all these places in England that I've just never UK in general, because, Wales and Scotland as well. But, there's so many random kind of places and venues, but so many people that I know are going to those places. So I'm excited. I've got some good family friends who are, for example, I'll have a bunch of people at the Plymouth show, which is kind of random, but so I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good fun as well.
Absolutely. Well, you're playing 30 minutes up the road from me in Llandudno in a place called Venue Cymru, which is a beautiful place. Hopefully we'll get to meet up and have a chat there. Fingers crossed, anyway, all being well. So yeah, it's great that, it's great to see you over in the UK again. After the incredible success of the Genesis tour, it's I'm really glad you've got this gig, and it's I'm looking forward to seeing the show.
No, thank you, man. Yeah, no, it means a lot, and absolutely, it's always great to be over there and spend some time in England and just be able to play shows. Really,
yeah, that's what it's all about, isn't it? And there's another thing I'd like to touch on. Obviously, you've had a lot to do with, both you and your dad have had a lot to do with Drumeo recently, and their production and their ideas are second to none, I have to say. And the grooves of Genesis, I'm not sure when you recorded it, but it is absolutely incredible and must-see viewing. How was that for you? That must have been slightly unnerving, having to do that, I'd imagine.
Well, thank you, man. No, yeah, so actually that video was taken from a live stream that we did.
Oh.
So I, broke down, basically we had this document full of all these grooves that we went over, and that was kind of essentially what you see in the video is a clip from the live stream we did.
Yeah.
So it ended up being, way more than that, which, that was a lot of prep that went into it, kind of really nerve-wracking going into it, just making sure you've got everything down. Because one thing is obviously if you're learning live versions on the road and, you're kind of going to get into rehearsals, but when you're kind of taking more of a teaching approach to parts that are written, it's, the attention to detail, the attention to detail has to be, way more intense because of that. But the guys at Drumeo made it super easy. I mean, great group of guys to work with. Brandon Toews, who essentially it was just him and I kind of developing the project together.
Yeah.
Because we started off doing a week in Switzerland where kind of did a sit down interview with my dad, and it was fun because I essentially got to bother him for 2 days, about every, basically, obviously not every song, but every kind of step of his career. I mean, we must have covered something like 30, 40 songs, or however many that was. And it's funny because sometimes he doesn't always want to talk about music, but this kind of gave me an excuse to be like, you've got no escape from this. I'm going to bother you for ages, talk about all your parts. But that was really great. It was honestly such a fun experience, and to do that with my dad, and just to kind of go over his career as a drummer and almost interview him. It was kind of out of my comfort zone, but I really enjoyed it actually. Mm-hmm. And then going to the Drumeo thing, it was we basically did 3 to 4 days of shooting a bunch of Genesis stuff, which will be dropped on a course some point this year.
Sure.
Where it'll be available for people to kind of learn these Genesis bits and get song transcriptions or whatever it may be. And then we also got to fit in doing some Better Strangers songs, and then those kind of the videos like the Grooves of Genesis, and then also kind of the first time hearing videos, which are always good fun. I was so stoked to do that because I've been watching Drumeo since I was a kid.
Of course.
So first of all, be invited and to be there in the blue room was really cool for me, just because I'm like, I've been growing up watching videos here. But to do the first time hearing, it was like almost one of those bucket list things, because you just see so many people do it on YouTube. So to be able to do one was really fun.
Oh, and it's just fabulous. The audio, the visuals, everything is great. And there's, I think it was Cinema Show, that the keyboard solo, it just shows you how challenging the stuff is. I think it washes over some people, but when you see it broken down, the work that must have gone into that is just, I find mind-boggling.
Yeah, I honestly, even when taking that into whenever I'm writing with my band, it's totally different, because Tony Banks was just like, well, I don't know who, but I'm assuming some of those bits like Cinema Show were, really down to Tony and all those parts. And it's just like, hey, I don't know how you write that, and then how you remember it and are able to play all these solos every night. Because on a drumming level, it's the part is thought out, but it's a big theme on the kind of throughout the Drumeo courses. One thing I learned, and just from speaking to my dad, is that he's very feel kind of based on whatever the song requires, and he's he's never kind of doing something like Supper's Ready isn't supposed to be intentionally complex, but that's just him feeling around the track. That's like almost like the second time he kind of second take almost of him doing the track. So that was a big kind of theme going into it. But when you're having to learn it, it definitely gets quite challenging. It's months and months of preparation to just make sure that you feel like I felt comfortable. And there was even some songs where I was putting the Drumeo guys through 4 or 5 takes, even more of certain songs, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what do you want from me? Like, this is it's but it was fun. They were really they made it super easy, and like you said, they're so professional, and their space is sounds great, and it looks really good. So it was my job was pretty easy because of them, which was great.
Well, yeah, obviously you mentioned doing the multiple takes, which is more than understandable. Let's be honest. You're playing it in front of some great drummers anyway, but it's there forever, isn't it? Once you've heard the song, it's gone. But it's on Drumeo, it's on YouTube forever for all to see. So you want it to be right and to your best.
For sure. And there'll always be, and on any recording, at least to me, there'll always be, even on whether I studio recordings with my band, there'll always be, maybe I could have done that differently. And sometimes that's the beauty of it being at that moment, you know what I mean? Because there's for example, on this new EP, there's one of the songs, which is essentially the second time we ever played it live. And we thought, we could never play it like that again. Let's use that as the recording. And that kind of goes in with the drumming stuff. Like there's I'm sure if I look back at the Grooves of Genesis video, there'll be a couple ones where I'm like, oh, that wasn't quite the fill I was going for. But there has to be a level of acceptance. When we were doing the course stuff, I really put some of the songs I was putting the Drumeo guys through a bunch. One of the ones we did we did 2 first time listening, hearing videos, and the one is the one that's out where we do Whiplash. But we did another one, and I won't say what it is, just for the sake of it being kind of a secret when they put it out, because I know it's going to come out probably later this year.
Sure.
But that one was way more kind of in the metal kind of genre. And because on the Whiplash one, I listened to it without drums. This one, I listened to it with it. And I'm like, now I've got to try and get it perfect, like that, like the drummer on the record. So that was, I remember, we do so many takes. And at one point, Brandon, he's like, dude, I think that's the take. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I should do it a couple. And I did it a couple more times. And then we ended up just going with the take that he had originally said was fine because, I listened back to it. But yeah, you're totally, and that's the thing with gigs too. There's two sides of it. There's one thing is trying to prepare and trying to be as consistent as possible to limit any kind of, inconsistencies or just issues with the part. But then there's also the side of like, if that does happen, there's no point in kind of losing sleep over it because like you said, the gig is over and it goes by really quickly. Next gig, that's when you should, do it better. But like to kind of dwell on one bad, one maybe tiny mess up in a gig is just, not great.
No. And that happens though, doesn't it? You could play a million great notes, one bad one, and it's like, but
yeah,
we're all the same.
And it's all perspective too, because like, we just, with my band just played a show, a hometown show here in Miami, and on a in-ear like monitoring sound level, it wasn't great for us. When you've got smaller shows and you've got a bunch of bands on the bill, it can get a bit tricky. So sound wasn't great to us, and then we kind of did a recording of it, and it wasn't. And I was like, oh man, was that show not as great? But then I listened to videos of it, and I'm like, actually, it's fine. It sounds great, So it's all perspective, and a lot of the times drummers especially get caught up on certain things that the audience wouldn't even notice. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But you're totally right. But when you're developing content that's for the internet, that's going to be out forever, and it's curated to drummers, that's really where you start to play mind games. That's why all the prep. I wanted to prep as much as possible because I know I wasn't just playing this to a fan. I was playing this to drummers who were gonna, if I mess up, they're gonna know just because that's just the nature of it. But no, it was good, and we had despite it being a lot of material, the preparation beforehand really helped, and we kind of flew through the tracks. It was a lot, but we were able to knock out a good amount every day. But I was definitely strategic in which songs I was picking to do in what order. You can only do like, a couple 10-minute prog anthems in a row before you're like, I need a break. I need a 3-minute. I need a 3-minute pop song right now, please.
Oh, amazing. And tell me, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but obviously the one in Switzerland with your dad, did he take much persuading to do that, or was it something he was keen to do?
I think maybe at first the idea maybe was just because, he's always been a bit wary now in his life about interviews and stuff, just because, the press has never been his best friend, what I mean, back in the day. But this, a big selling point to him, and this is what I told him, is like, this whole thing is just about drums. It's not even really about you as a singer. Of course, that came into the conversation just like by default, but it's literally just about drumming. And I think that made him open to the idea. And then when he did it, I think he really enjoyed it just because I don't think he's ever really done that, of just spoken about his drum parts exclusively for a whole thing. It's always been maybe in the middle of an interview, they'll ask, what's your favorite song to play on drums, whatever. But this was just purely based on his career as a drummer. So I think for him to be able to talk about that, and even some really old, because I was so surprised on, my dad's the kind of guy where sometimes he'll tell you this crazy story that you've never heard before. And sometimes, like some of the songs, he may not have much to say about it. He's, and some big songs, which is funny, like I'm trying to think whether it was Watcher of the Skies or something where, not much to say about it. He's just like, yeah, it just kind of happened. And we played. But I remember the first one, we went over Musical Box and, kicked off the whole interviewing period of 2 days with like this 30-minute story, and I was like, this is going to be great. Like, what have I been kind of worrying about? So I think he really enjoyed it on that front for sure.
Good.
But also just for me to it felt really nice after we finished to be like, wow, like we just went over your whole career as a drummer, and this is stuff that's like way before my time. So to kind of go over it and talk about it with him taught me a lot. And honestly, at some points I was like, man, I wish we would have had this conversation before we went out on the road. You know what I mean? Because there's like some things that you take in and it changed your perspective on certain drum parts. But no, overall it's a really good experience.
Well, there's me and a few million other drummers and musicians are so glad that's happened, because again, it's a legacy. It's there forever, isn't it? Forever to see. So it's amazing. So there we go. Right. I've got a couple more things to mention. You're doing the 8G band for Seth Meyers well, the interview is probably going to come out after this, but it's in like 5 days or something, isn't it?
Yeah, I leave on Sunday and we shoot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
That's going to be fun.
No, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm pretty nervous about it. Just based on I'm a kind of person, but kind of drummer who really likes to be well rehearsed.
Yeah.
And that's not really part of this gig. It's you're kind of on the fly. You're really feeling it out. So, but I'm lucky. I've spoken to a couple drummers who have done it, and they've kind of given me some tips, saying first day, not gonna lie, is pretty nerve wracking, but he's like after that, they've all said after that first day, it's smooth sailing. But I'm really grateful to them for asking me to do it, because it's a really kind of some of my favorite drummers have done it, and it's such a different kind of thing, and everybody said it's so much fun. So I'm really excited and looking forward to it, and just it's a totally different kind of scenery for me. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly, just because and that I'm able to kind of get to grips with the kind of TV side of being in a band. You know what I mean?
I'm sure it'll be fine. So you've kind of got a nice run into the Mike and the Mechanics talk. So I guess you probably fly over not far after that to obviously rehearse and stuff. So that's really nice, isn't it? That must be quite nice knowing you've got a few cool things and then off to the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it helps. And obviously, like you said, it's with Better Strangers, obviously not being able to play shows. So we're hoping, once I get back in June, to be able to set up, some dates in the US at least, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're totally right. It's nice to kind of have. It's weird though, because I look at the calendar and I'm like, I know I'm leaving to the Mechanics thing soon, but then I'm like, oh, and I also have to do the week in New York. You know what I mean? So it keeps it kind of going. So you're not kind of counting down the days until you leave. It kind of keeps you active and your mind from kind of stressing and getting nervous about everything. So yeah.
And one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. What kit might we expect to see on the Mechanics tour? Are we gonna see the Gretsch kit, the headless, the bottom with just the top heads, or are we gonna see something different?
So we're not. There's no concert toms.
Okay.
Mike was like, he's like, Nick, I don't want a big kit. That was what he said, and I'm like, hey, that's okay. I mean, I also don't think that the single-headed kit would necessarily fit the sound the best.
No, you're right.
But I'm actually really excited about the kit that I'm playing. Gretsch and we basically came up with a new finish, which is essentially the same finish as this kit that I have behind me, which is a deep black marine pearl. But we've kind of kept that same finish, but changed the color, so it's like a purple marine pearl.
Oh, nice.
And they've sent me some pictures. It's been I haven't seen it in person yet, because it got built in their factory, and then they sent it straight over to the UK. So it's in the UK now. But they sent me some pictures, and I'm really excited about it.
Wow.
And it'll stay in the UK for a bit, if especially if my band ends up going there before the end of the year, to just have a kit over there. But yeah, it's double headed, 10, 13, 16, 18 toms, and then a 22 kick, and yeah, I mean, definitely a bit more of a simpler setup. I mean, it's essentially the kit that I use here, just without the concert toms, and a few of the extra bits that I throw in there as well. But it's kind of cool. I'm excited because it's always fun kind of taking a different approach with a different setup. That was kind of a cool part of doing, whether it was my dad's tour or Genesis tours, of I'm sitting behind the concert tom kit, which I don't do at home. And it, it's just a cool kind of change of scenery, makes you play things a bit different. So I'm really looking forward to the kit. I mean, I'm sure it'll sound great because it's, this one sounds great and it's essentially the same one, but I'm just looking forward to this kind of new finish. I hope it looks as good in person as it does on the photos, but yeah.
So that's even more things to be excited about, isn't it? You're not only coming to do a great, 80-day tour or whatever in total, but on a new drum set as well, which it's like tops it off nicely, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I'm very thankful to Gretsch for, being flexible to make it. Cause I remember, calling them about the idea, and I'm like, look, this is the kind of what I want. And they're like, yeah, we don't do that. But they're like, but I think we can. And then they made it possible. And when they showed it to me, I was like, oh yeah, you guys nailed it. You know what I mean? Like totally what I wanted. But yeah, I'm very thankful to be, endorsed by, these great companies like Gretsch, Sabian, DW. I mean, the list goes on, but I'm very lucky to kind of have those guys in my corner,
Well, you could say that they're very lucky to have you as well. That's the way I look at it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It goes hand in hand, doesn't it? At the end of the day, you look after each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, you always look after me. This is the third time you've been on, and honestly, I'm ever so grateful that you give up your time so generously to talk to me. It's really, really appreciated.
Of course, no, anytime, and anytime you want to have me on, it's always a pleasure. So thank you as always.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So good luck with Seth Meyers next week, and that will have been obviously by the time this comes out, so that won't make a lot of sense, but at least we're able to see it. And best of luck with the Mike and the Mechanics tour. As I say, hopefully we're going to get to catch up in person on that one if the stars align. Hopefully they will, and I'll get to see this beautiful new Gretsch kit and hear it.
Absolutely. No, yeah, thanks again, and appreciate that. And we'll definitely, hit you up when we're in town, and looking forward to it. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nick. See you soon.
Yeah, take care.